Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, boys and girls, wherever in the world you might be. Welcome to the Highbury Squad and a new series, The Debate. Here we go.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Highbury Squad, whether you're here for the first time or for multiple times. I'm Sophie Nicolau, and in the house with me is my podcast brother from another mother, Mr. Super Kevin Campbell.
Yeah, ready.
You ready for this one, Kev? Let's get stuck right into it. This is a new show, and this is a show that Super Kevin Campbell has come up with, because a lot of the times we have subjects within a show that we want to get stuck into a little bit more. And the other night we were talking about Arsene Wenger, and of course with his Invincible movie coming out, it felt like the appropriate time to launch the series with a debate on Mr. Wenger. Here's the scoop. We're going to post this. You're watching it on the channel right now. So your role, squaddies, and everyone who listens to the show, is to let us know what you think in the YouTube comments. And then on a live show, we are going to discuss everything you say and all of your thoughts. Don't be shy, be honest, be candid. I don't think I need to say that to these guys, Kev, because they're never shy to let us know what they think.
True. Very true. Very true. And look, we're hoping to have a good debate about a legend.
We are. And Kev, there's no doubt that Arsene Wenger is a legend. He became a very polarizing figure, of course. He arrived at Arsenal in grand fashion, and I think all Arsenal fans in 1996, and everyone in football, let's be honest, was Wenger who?
Oh, of course. Arsene who? Arsene who? It was, they say he looked like a school teacher. He had the glasses on, and he was unconventional, didn't look like a manager who anyone was used to. And obviously, the managers that Arsenal have had, two Scottish managers previously to him, George Graham and what's his name?
Bruce Rioch.
Bruce Rioch, respectively. It's he was just a totally different character, completely.
It was a grand departure for the Arsenal to bring in somebody like him. And I think everyone, maybe thought Bruce Rioch was a nice guy, but he wasn't the guy for the Arsenal. And the league was changing at that time. The influx of money in the Premier League. Manchester United had begun their dominance. And there was the beginning, if you could say, of the resurgence of Chelsea, not necessarily in Europe, Kev, but they were winning the odd cup here and there. Liverpool were going through a transitional period too. So when Arsene Wenger came in, let's be fair, he inherited quite a team in the sense of that back line, Kev. That was a gift, wasn't it?
Well, that was a George Graham gift, let's be honest, because everything that was good about Arsenal was built on a foundation of defence. And you've got Dave Seaman. Well, all of the back five were England internationals. Let's have it right. They all could have maybe played together for England, and England wouldn't have looked back. But they were never given that opportunity, obviously, because of managers pick who they want to. But Arsene Wenger inherited winners. He inherited winners, guys who know how to win. So what a fantastic foundation to build forward with.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of teams, Klopp did it the other way around. But with Arsenal having that foundation at the front, it really gave him the opportunity to build the champagne football style that he wanted. One thing that even Sir Alex Ferguson credits him for was not only changing Arsenal Football Club's DNA and culture from a nutrition perspective to a training perspective to how footballers should behave, look after their bodies, He really transformed English football. As a footballer who was on the opposite side, Kev, playing against this Arsenal team, can you talk me through a little bit about that respect factor that he garnered very quickly in terms of changing the landscape of how a modern day footballer at that time should behave?
Well, not only how modern footballers should behave, it was everything, Soph. It was the way they carried themselves, it was the way they played, the way they moved on the pitch. It was just everything encompassing. And you know, when the team starts to win and you start to build that fear, because that's what it is. It's a fear. When you play against Arsene Wenger's Arsenal team in the first half of his tenure, there was a fear factor when you played them, because you knew you had to defend properly. And even when you defended properly, they still could beat you because they had so much quality. And you've got to try and score a goal, and you knew what to expect out of that back five. So it was always very difficult to play against Arsene Wenger's teams because they were so free-flowing. They had so much flair, so much speed. I think that was something that really you don't really notice it until you're actually out on the pitch. So how quick and how agile and lively they were as a team. And even though, you know, the main boys might not play, Sylvan Wiltord is another one who's an unsung hero. He always came up with a goal and always could come up with something special. It was a special squad, Sophie.
Yeah.
It was a special squad that he amassed.
He banned them from drinking together, didn't he? That was, he instilled a few things. In his first season, he kind of banned the team from drinking together. We finished third and we lost out to Champions League football to the entertainers at the time, Newcastle United. I think, did we finish on equal points? And there was something, I'll have to check it. But, you know, in his first season, he finished third. It's not a disastrous
Not shabby
result.
at all, is it? It's
no,
not shabby.
Missing out on Champions League, which back then, Kev, was tougher because it wasn't
top two.
It wasn't as easy. And then in the next season, he really started building that early success. And I think, you know, that 97-98 season was when he really, his momentum in terms of what he instilled, what he bought in that first season, you know, still having the players that he did from the George Graham time as well, Kev, he really put his footprint on the club in a more aggressive manner. And the players that came in, of course, changed the trajectory of the club.
And it's a year on. So
yes.
It's a year on. People are a lot more accustomed to his ways. They know what to expect. They know the training methods. They know what's expected of them. And there's a certain comfort in knowing, you know, it's our first season with him and we finished third the previous season. You know, there's going to be additions. Can we then kick on and do better?
Yeah.
And it proved that they could.
Paul Merson had moved on at the time. He stopped a move from John Hartson going to West Ham, I think, at the time. Ray Parlour emerged in the team as well. I mean, he did... Listen, you guys are wondering, where's the debate right now? We're just setting the scene. Because for me, as many as great players as he brought in as Vieira, Petit, Thierry Henry, you know, Sol Campbell, Overmars, Pires, Freddie.
Loren, you can go on and on. Paulo Torre, you know, you can go on.
Yeah, there were a lot of dogs as well, Kev.
Well, Arsene Wenger, and this is where the debate's going to come, because just like a football match, there's a first half and a second half of his Arsenal career. And there's the Emirates, which is the first half. And Highbury, which is the first half, and the Emirates, which is the second half, which is probably going to be cause most of the debate.
Yes.
Because let's be honest, Sophie, I'll ask you and the people who are listening, what was it like when you were going to the ground at Highbury, you know, when that team were flying?
Well, it was a different experience because I was a lot younger. I think everyone knows who listens to the show. My dad was a Man United supporter, so he never wanted to take me to Arsenal games. So it was down to my cousin to take me to the games, especially when in the George Graham era, right? And a lot of the times I was younger and my dad was like, you're not going to the football. And I was like, yes, I can go to the football. If the boys can go, I can go. So when the Wenger era kicked in, I was much more independent, right? I was able to find my way there. I was sitting in the North Bank. And it was like this transitional period where, you know, we played well, but then it was like, wow, what is this? It's kind of like when you see a film with new CGI, you know, like when the Terminator 2 came out and you were like, how did they do that? Oh my gosh, this is incredible. The evolution, the technology, the presentation of seeing it. And you're thinking, oh my God, this is the most amazing movie I've ever seen. It was kind of like that. I was like, wow, what is this? And Highbury was just so tight and contained, and the atmosphere and the vibe. And then, you know, when you see Dennis Bergkamp play, you're like, who is this guy? What is this? You know, we as English football fans, let's be honest, we admired a lot of international stars, but the league kind of introduced us as well, Kev, to a different style of football. Wenger certainly did that. But then when you saw the Bergkamps, the Zolas come in, you know, the Ravanellis, Di Matteo Vialli, Ruud Gullit, you know, in that time, it was
flair.
Yeah.
Major flair.
So not only were you watching the Arsenal evolution, you were watching teams that were coming thinking, holy cow, football has just got a lot more interesting. Kev, I don't know if you agree with me, but for me, it was like a wow
I played
factor.
against all of them, and let me tell you, I was on the end of some beatings by some of them boys. So, again, it's the level, isn't it? The level starts to rise. The level started rising, and the quality of player and the quality of teams started to get better. But Arsene Wenger was at the forefront of that.
He was.
I've got one question for you, and obviously the people live. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I want to ask you about the transfer policy then. Were you happy with the transfer policy then?
I just think it was simpler, if anything, right? So I think now it's become it's become a show in itself. Whereas back then it was more of let's do the business. You know, now it's like its own parade. It's its own kind of monetization. It's become the beast that it is. Now you've got the January transfer window as well. The cutoff was a lot different back then, wasn't it, Kev?
Yeah.
And I think the difference was once the international players started coming through, the evolution of that. And I think, you know, Jack Walker and his Blackburn, really, everyone keeps pointing the finger at Abramovich in terms of throwing the money out at the time. But I think people forget that Jack Walker's Blackburn
was the first. He was the first.
Really the first.
Yeah.
And that was when the Premier League was incepted. So it started then, and it took a while for the Uniteds and the Liverpools and the Arsenals to kind of catch up to the fact that, so if we want a quality player, we've got to pay 50 million for him. That was back in the early 90s, right? So for me, I liked the fact that we brought in all of these international stars. They became stars at the Arsenal, I believe.
That's right.
I truly, Dennis Bergkamp was struggling in Italy. Thierry was struggling in Italy. Robert Pires,
Vieira was struggling in Italy.
Vieira was totally unknown. No, Arsenal fans, put your hands on your heart. Who knew Petit? Who knew Vieira? Right? The one that came in that was the biggest flair of all was Sol Campbell. You know, from that time, Overmars was a bit of a star, and that was a coup.
Yeah.
You know, Freddie Ljungberg was an unknown quantity, but somewhat a player that a lot of people had their eye on. Right. A little bit like Anders Limpar, who you know really well, Kev. When Anders Limpar came in, it was like, oh wow, that was the flair kind of started back then as well. So when Wenger came in, he put together a group of wannabes who became has-beens from their previous clubs with a couple of stars, and then he added the signing of all signings, which was taking Sol Campbell from Tottenham. But to answer your question, I thought it was a simpler transfer policy back then, which helped Arsenal build that team. I think it would be different now.
Well, somebody you haven't mentioned was David Dein. And
yes,
David Dein backed the manager wholeheartedly, understood what he wanted to do. And don't forget, Sophie, they were bringing in young players. They were bringing young players into Arsenal Football Club. And these two were instrumental in the re-emergence of Arsenal. And Highbury, that's why Highbury holds such significance to a lot of us, is because these two guys plotted and planned what they were going to do to become the best, Sophie. And Arsenal were the best under these two. They were.
I think I would love to hear more from David Dein, because for me, Arsenal really changed when he left. That was the moment. And I feel like Arsene Wenger lost his right arm. I mean, look at them. To this day, this was last night in London.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking together. They still have a relationship. They're still close. You know, they still have a tremendous amount of good words.
Respect for each other.
Mm-hmm. And losing David Dein was just the worst thing.
Catastrophic for Arsenal.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, Soph.
And after that is where the part 2 begins. But before we get to the part 2, there were moments and last-minute moments for legends like this. Would you believe it? The goal against Everton, seeing Tony Adams win the double with Wenger. You know, these images.
Special.
You know,
Absolutely
really special.
Special moments. You know, winning trophies for Arsenal. You know, I'm not at the club and I'm buzzing because Arsenal are winning, you know. Sophie, it's so important for the Arsenal to win. And the way they won it in style. You know, it was brilliant. Absolutely first class.
It was. So we wanted to build it up because I think you guys know, most of us have a tremendous amount of respect for Arsene Wenger, what he did in the time that he did it, and the evolution of, like we said, not only as a manager, but English football.
Culminating in the Invincibles, right?
Absolutely. And I put up this image. I mean, these moments, Kev, just incredible. Look at these players. That shirt, I have it. You know, I treasure it. The O2 shirt is just like so special.
So the young man on the left, was that the sign of things that was coming when he eventually left?
So for me, losing him to Chelsea was catastrophic. It was an indication and a sign, and I don't care what anyone says about Ashley Cole. To me, he's the best left back that has ever played in the Premier League. He has won it all at the highest level. And I got to spend some time with Ashley when he came to LA Galaxy. And I think he's a very misunderstood character, Kev. Mm-hmm. And when you know your worth, the way he described what happened in his book, I think is the biggest issue people have. It's like, oh, you swerved your Mercedes because you were offered $5,000 less. Okay, it's all relative. He thinks he's worth X, and Arsenal or Arsene Wenger thought he was worth Y. And when you let a play like that go, which is what worries me about today, you can never let that happen to Emile Smith-Rowe. You can never let that happen to Saka. You can never, ever let that happen again. And that was the beginning of a trend.
Yes.
Kev, and this is where we get stuck into the nitty-gritty of letting players go to rivals or clubs that used to milk our Arsenal cows.
Sophie, they used to prey on us, you're right. They used to pick our carcass. We were told a narrative after obviously getting to the Champions League final, missing out on the Champions League, bringing the Champions League home. And obviously Ashley Cole leaving, then that happened, Sophie. And we moved to the Emirates. And the narrative, let's be honest, is we're moving to the Emirates to be able to compete at the top table with the biggest teams in Europe. That's what we were told. And what transpired after that, Sophie, what was not right. It wasn't Arsenal. Our best players were being sold or let go to rivals.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't do that. You do not do that. Now, obviously, something had changed within the club. Arsene Wenger's mindset, I believe, had changed because he knew what it took to win. He'd had these great players and put them together and won and gone unbeaten. We've got the gold trophy to prove it. And do you then start to sell the family, the Arsenal family jewels to your rivals? No, I don't. Me personally, listen, people talk about the financial issues at the club at the time, etc. But you still have to be competitive. You still have to be able to put out a team that could win the big trophies, which is the Premier League is the big trophy. And we suffered for many a year. Remember, we didn't win a trophy for 9 years, Soph. 9 years. Arsenal, after you look at Arsene Wenger's first Highbury half of his tenure at the football club. So these things need to be debated because that should not be happening under a world-class manager. And we have the debate, don't we? Is it the manager or is it the players?
Yep.
Well, the first half of his career, Arsene Wenger had them, he was the manager, set them up, and the players went out there and done it. So we say, well, Arsene Wenger's the greatest Arsenal manager ever. But what about the second half of his season, of his career? Was he the greatest Arsenal manager in the second half of his career? I don't think he was.
The last time we won the Premier League was in the 2003-2004 era. We got to the Champions League in 2006 and we lost in a devastating fashion. I think we all don't want to relive that day. And that was a sick moment that I think we all felt like for a moment that we were actually going to pull it off. Haven't won a European trophy since you were at the club, Kev. Haven't won the League Cup since you were at the club. He never won the League Cup, but he did win the FA Cup 7 times, and he won the Premier League 3 times. And of course, you can throw in a few Community Shields. I think 8 Community Shields, maybe 7. But we all know the Community Shield is just the cherry on top. What matters is the Premier League. And to go that long without winning the Premier League, and here we are 17 years later, and we still haven't won it. And this is where the debate really kicks in, because for me, I totally respect that first tenure of Wenger. He won the double twice. He got us to a Champions League final. He gave us some of the best years of our lives. He competed with a Manchester United team that were insatiable. I mean, it was so hard to stop them from winning the Premier League. But if there was a team that was right up there with them most seasons, it was us. The Roy
and they feared.
They feared us, Kev. That's why there were fights in the tunnel, because we both felt like we were the big. We're the big dog on the block. We're the big dog on the block, the big man. And you're coming to our pat now. We got to have it. And they've never gotten over us going there and winning the league. No,
tell you.
And he won the league at Shite Hart Lane. He won the league at Old Trafford. I mean, he won the league doing things that no other manager has done, right?
Yep.
And when you look at Arsenal Football Club, we built this reputation. George Graham, you were young then. You were sitting in the stands at Anfield that night. We did the same to Liverpool when they were the giants of Europe. So how did we go from being this big boy, massive, mentality-driven, muscle men, hungry, fighting to the death squad, to going to the Emirates and buying foo players and weak sauce mentality, and then creating the trophy, finishing 4th because it was qualifying for the Champions League. We never ever, after that, Kev, went out to win the Champions League. We just wanted to get into the Champions League because of money.
Because of the money.
As a fan, am I talking out of my arse?
No, of course you're not, because it's the truth. It'd be interesting to see what the people think in the comments, and we're going to obviously debate the comments on the show. But again, the narrative changed. You know, buying players is so important to be able to progress the football team. And yeah, I understand there were some financial restrictions, but you know what? So money was spent. Money was spent, and the right players weren't bought.
I mean, we went through the Jovinios, the Shamaks, the Christopher Rays, the Senderoses, the
Tim Kallstroms and
yes,
all the,
the Segans of the world, and the DNA when we got to the Emirates, you had Fabregas, who was kind of like the lone wolf. I use this terminology sometimes. I felt at times, if I look back and I look now, Fabregas was definitely Jon Snow in that Battle of the Bastard scene in Game of Thrones. A lot of the times you have this world-class player that you're supposed to be building a team around and creating a Premier League championship team out of it. And he's like a lone wolf fighting, and we put all of our eggs in his basket, Kev, and we put all the pressure on his shoulders, which I was so afraid of that we were going to do to Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe. But I think we've curbed that trend from happening to those two. But
they've got a supporting cast now, yeah.
They do now. But with Fabregas, I don't blame him leaving. I really don't. Because at the time, I don't blame Ashley Cole for leaving. I don't blame Robin Van Persie for leaving. I mean, the Nasris and the Adebayors, they're a totally different kettle of fish. But when you had Fabregas, when you had Van Persie, when you had some of these players in place and you failed to build around them, and you've said it so often, 2 signings you needed later on when we fast forward to, we've signed this big name, 1 marquee signing every summer, started with Santi, then it was Ozil, and then it was Sanchez. But yet, in the critical positions, you sold us on flair and fabulous, but you never sold us on grit and determination, which is what this team always lacked under you in the last 10 years.
And here's the funny thing, Soph. When obviously Tony Adams needs to be replaced, Arsene Wenger went and got Sol Campbell.
Yeah, well, I don't understand the logic.
So you know what we need. You need a big, strong, dominant centre-back, and you need a big, strong central midfielder who can protect and play. Everybody could see it, bar the manager. And that's why I want to debate this. Why could Arsene Wenger not see what not only Arsenal fans, every other fan I spoke to could see what was needed? Because if we'd have got that, I know we would have won the title. I know we would have. Because we had all the flair going forward, but what we didn't have is that defensive solidity in the spine of our team.
I don't understand how you can go, Kev, from pulling off this, one of the greatest heists in football history.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
I mean, I think Luis Figo is comparable, with the Real Madrid-Barcelona rivalry. And we've seen the original Ronaldo, Kev. But in English football, there's been no greater heist than this. Agreed?
100%. 100%.
So how do you go from being that club, Kev?
Because do you know what? I honestly think, and I mean this with the utmost respect, I think the standards dropped at the football club.
Because
it really dropped.
Because of what?
We know what it takes to win. We know what caliber of player it takes to win. Mm-hmm. But when you do not sign those players, that comes from the manager. Let's have it right, because we see now Mikel Arteta get battered because this isn't working out and that isn't working out. So we can't have it. We can't just skip over and say Arsene Wenger was all wonderful. We can't do that. We've got to look at the truth. And the truth of the matter is, Sophie, we couldn't compete because we were short-handed. Money was spent, and we didn't recruit the right players in the key positions. That's the bottom line. Mesut Ozil, at his pomp, was a fantastic player. He had nobody in the midfield who could say, Mesut, you do that bit, I'll cover you. We didn't have that. We didn't have that strong man in midfield. We didn't have that centre-back who could say, right, you get in there, who can control stuff like a Tony, like a Sol Campbell, that type of dominant centre-half. We didn't. We had nice players and we played lovely football, Sophie. But what happened? There were games where before half-time, the game was over. We got bullied by teams. Again, that's the standards have dropped. And then when you hear a player come out and say, one of the players, i.e. Sanchez, he so wants to win, and I don't get it. Basically, the player at Arsenal doesn't get how he's so driven to win. That's a drop in standards.
This is, you've got comparable, figures here and signings here, of course. You've got Giroud, you've got Senderos, you've got Sagan, you've got Mustafi, you've got Chambers. But then you've got players like, Kolo Toure. Silvestre was just a terrible signing. Jury's out on Rob Holding. Mertesacker was good for a time. And you've just got a lot of dross, Kev.
Listen, at the end of the day, it boils down to Arsene Wenger. Whichever way we look at it, the buck stops with the manager. If he wants quality, you know what? Save up your chips and then go and get the right one. Don't bring dross in.
Kev, did you play with Francis Jeffers at Everton?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
That was a disaster signing at Arsenal.
He was too young, Sophie, he's too young. Francis Jeffers, he's a very good player, was a very good player.
He was.
But the problem is, Sophie, he's not Rooney. Rooney at 17 could come in and hold his own at Manchester United. With all that quality that was there, he could hold his own. And more so. Francis Jeffers was coming into a squad of such quality that he wouldn't be playing. And I told him, I've come through the ranks at Arsenal. I said, you need to learn your trade because you are not ready. You are not ready.
Wow. You are listening to the debate here on the Highbury Squad. The debate comes when you step in. So we're posting the show. You're listening to it now on the channel on replay. And it's your comments that are going to truly drive the live debate when this show goes out. So we're giving you the crux of our thoughts on the Wenger era and his time. We're not going to go into the nuts and bolts. We know it all, everyone. We don't need to dot the I's and cross the T's. We're just giving you the overview and our thoughts. Now it's your turn to let us know what you think, because that's what's going to create the true debate on the live show. We're doing it with a little bit of a twist. So for all the lauding he gets signing Vieira, Petit, Overmars, Pires, Thierry, Sol Campbell. Someone did this a while ago too, Kev.
Yeah.
He has bought... okay, Arteta's in here, and I swear to God, I did not mean for Arteta to be on this.
Yes, you
I borrowed
did.
This. I did not.
Tell me in comment whether Sophie meant to do this, yes or no, everybody.
This is someone that put together Arsenal's worst 11 of the latest era, and I think it's very unfair to have Mikel Arteta in there completely. Jeez, I can't believe that has happened. But I put it in there because of the Jenkinson, Schillaci, Silvestre, Santos, Miyachi, Shamak, Park Chu-sung, Javinho, Denilson. That's just half of it. Plus the other players I showed. The Segans of the world. Mustafi, Kolasinac. I mean, yeah, for a while they were okay. But really,
But
the
it's still a drop
DNA
in
changed,
standard.
Kev.
Still
It's
a
a
drop in
huge drop.
standard. It's a huge drop in standard.
He allowed that to happen. He and Gazidis, they're on their watch in the last 10 years at the Emirates. Would you, and I want everyone to also answer this, Kev, what do you think? The FA Cups, the first cup when we beat Hull, he should have walked off into the sunset with a cup under his hand on a horse, riding into the sunset with a beautiful image saying, "Thank you, Arsenal Football Club. Finally, after 9-10 years, I've won another trophy," right?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it was 2006 was when we won. Yeah, so 2014 was when we won the first FA Cup. Do you agree that's when he should have gone? Or even earlier, maybe?
I would say so. Look, there is a shout to say yes, he's won a trophy and he goes, but I think to myself, okay, he's won a trophy, maybe he's got his mojo back, Soph. So let's see how it goes on from there. And I think, remember, there was some dissension coming, wasn't there? There was unrest around. For me, though, Sophie, I've got to say, when I was 100% sure he should have walked was after Chelsea.
The 2017 FA Cup.
He's got to walk. Because remember, he said he will let everybody know what's going to happen at the end of the season. And everybody was just thinking, you know, we try and win a trophy. He wins a trophy, then he could ride off into the sunset. Yeah, he's our greatest manager, etc. And then he announced he signed another 2-year contract. That just got everybody more heated. And there were people battling in the stadium and stuff. It wasn't a nice place.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't good.
It wasn't, Kev. And 2017, it was masterful, that FA Cup. Beat City in the semi, beat Chelsea in the final. And Per Mertesacker had one of the games of his life in that final. It was the farewell game, led by example, took on a young Rob Holding and made him look like a superstar that time. It was the perfect exit for him, having beaten those Titans that had schooled us for so long.
Yep, changed the system, didn't he? Changed the system and put Per Mertesacker in the middle. So he's got protection either side. Per Mertesacker's reading of the game was excellent. And he nurtured a young Rob Holding through it.
Yep.
And we beat Chelsea, which was fantastic. That was the time, in my opinion, Soph, Arsene Wenger should have said, Gooners, it's been emotional. But, you know, always wanted to go out making you happy.
2 more points before we let everyone go that we'd love their comments on too, Kev. Neither one of us agree with the abuse and all of the nonsense with the planes flying over stadiums and the Wenger out. I put this picture up earlier, and I don't know why Tony Adams is in it, but Tony Adams had some harsh words because he loves Arsenal Football Club. But the Wenger out signs in the stadium, the flying planes over the stadium, some of the vitriol that came his way, I always felt that as bad of a job I think he's doing in the Premier League, you can't treat somebody like that. I think we're both in agreement that was distasteful.
100%. You know, the way people spoke about him and treated him was terrible. Football wise, you can say we're not good enough and you want him out and all of that. But when it gets personal, Sophie, that's the thing. When it gets personal, it's not right.
Totally
unnecessary. It's definitely not right. And you know, he had to suffer.
And he did. And you know what? He had a choice to end it the way he wanted to. And he ended it the way he wanted to, just a little bit too late. And the last point I want to get off on here with you, Kev, is a lot of people may come back and say, well, the owners. He had the keys to the Arsenal kingdom, did he not, Super Kev?
He did. He had the keys to the Arsenal. Everything was on his watch. And he was the controller. Let's have it right. Whatever Arsene Wenger wanted, he got. Because he was the power at the football club. Because of the longevity he had. And he couldn't get it right. I mean, Arsene Wenger used to talk about the dressing room, the camaraderie in the dressing room was great. etc. And then we'll go to some of the big boys, and the game will be over before half time. Within 20, 25 minutes, the game's over. So, and that's supposed to be a team with a camaraderie, unbelievable camaraderie in the dressing room. I've crossed the white line for Arsenal. I've been in the trenches. I know a team with a camaraderie do not get battered physically in the first half, and the game's over. You've got to hang on into the game.
Some people would even argue that he should have been fired after the 8-2 at Old Trafford. People talking about coaches being fired now, like an Ole losing, being battered by Liverpool, continually being battered by City. It works differently in a lot of different ways for a lot of different clubs, Kev. But we had some horrendous beatings. That was
the worst for me. For me, that was the worst. 8-2 at Old Trafford. That was the worst. Because I was working. And how do I come? I'm a gooner. How do I even explain it? And they come, in the media, they're going to come at you because they know you're a gooner.
Mm-hmm.
So they want you to explain it. And my phone's going. I'm getting all the texts coming through about, with the Man United fans carrying the Arsenal coffin and all sorts of stuff. That was painful for me, real painful for me. I mean, losing at Liverpool and Chelsea and all these teams were bad, but that one, that was the most. That was the most painful.
Especially because we had that rivalry with them and we were equal to them at one point in the Premier League. But we folded like cheap lawn chairs that day at Old Trafford, and it was humiliating. It was embarrassing. And I wanted to crawl into a football hole for days and days and days. So, listen, you guys.
So, I've got one question for you to finish.
Okay.
Arsene Wenger has now come out and said he should have left. There was opportunities for him to leave and he should have left. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't want to hear it. I just think it's revisionist history on his part. He never wanted to leave. He always talked about wanting to be at Arsenal for his entire career. And I think that a lot of some of the stuff that he's been saying, why didn't you make your book more open? Why didn't you speak a little bit more truth in your book? It was a boring book. And I love Arsene Wenger. I have a total amount of respect for him. But also, let's be candid. Let's be honest. You had the opportunity to go to Real Madrid, France, all these different places, and you stuck with Arsenal for a reason. You filled your pockets at Arsenal. Let's be honest. It was a cash cow for you. And of course you loved the club. But also in the latter years of that, it became a very easy gig. I don't care what anyone says, come at me, throw darts at me. But I don't want to hear him say, I could have left him then. I could have signed Mbappe. I could have signed Ronaldo. I could have signed N'Golo Kante. I could have signed this person, this person. As an Arsenal fan, it breaks my heart even more to know that you could have and you didn't. And why didn't you?
That's the ultimate question. Why didn't you?
Were you all filling your pockets? There, I said it out loud. What were you and Gazidis doing? Why? Why didn't you buy these players? Why didn't you bring these players in? Where would the Arsenal Football Club be now? What would we have won? What could we have done? I do not want to hear that narrative from him one more time, Kevin. And here he is talking about having a World Cup every 2 years. Again, what is it built on? Money. Don't get caught up in this innocent Mr. Professor look with the glasses. He was a great manager for the Arsenal for a really long time, and I have a total amount of respect for him. But sometimes we put people on pedestals and then you can't criticize them because of that. I don't want statues built for people. Forget statues. I mean, what is the point?
Well, whether he's got a statue or not, we still can debate him and we still can question some of the decisions that he makes. Because you know what? The first half of his career was incredible. The second half, not so good. And always the question I will leave you and the listeners with is this. Should Arsene Wenger have left the club in a better state than he found it? I say he should have. but he didn't. And that's always, for me, something that I look at and think, Arsene, Gazidis, the narrative changed to not signing top players, but to sign, it was metrics. It doesn't fit the metrics of the signings. What kind of nonsense is that? Football's about players who can do the job. That's the head and tail of it. We're seeing that now, even with Arteta. He's got players who can do the job, and we're improving. So, metric, forget all that nonsense.
Moneyball may work in baseball, but it doesn't work in football. So, let us know what you think. Please make your comments. Please put your comments in the YouTube section here on the show. Let it rip, let it ride. Let us know your true feelings about all of this. We know you won't hold back. And Kevin and I will debate this with you in a live chat a couple of days after this show is on our channel. Arsene Wenger, to me, is like that relationship you've been in for years. You had so many good times and you fell in love and it was wonderful. And you look back at pictures and videos and you think, my God, what a time. But then the relationship starts to sour a little bit and you try everything you can to make it work and piece it together so you can feel what you felt in the early part of those glorious years. That, to me, is how I feel about Wenger. Now you let us know how you feel. Until then, we'll see you next time.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.